Welcome to another episode of the Cybersecurity Boardroom. I'm your host, Vince Sciotto, and I'm joined by my co-host, T Soul. T, how you doing, man?
Doing good, Vince. How you doing?
Good. How's the week been?
The week's been good, man. It's been good. We had Father's Day this weekend. I got to lay low a little bit. But it's starting to heat up here. It's like 90 degrees today, and they've got like a heat warning.
Yeah,
They've got a heat warning for like the next week.
that's awesome. The Northeast, where you can have 3 or 4 seasons in 1 week. I heard it was snowing like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it was like last week. 2 inches of hail, something like that.
That's crazy.
You don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Some people say it's climate change. I don't know. I'm not a scientist.
Right. Neither am I. So what's going on in the world of cyber?
Well, there's always something going on in the world of cyber. But Truist Bank.
Yep.
And Truist Bank, they're actually the product of a merger. They are the product of the merger of SunTrust and BB&T. They had a breach. They actually confirmed a breach. This happened back in October of 2023. Spider, that is the threat actor. That's like a ransom gang. They posted the bank's information, the bank's data for sale on a hacking forum. Stolen data. It's got sensitive information for about 65,000 employees, bank transactions, even, Vince, source code for the bank's IVR, interactive voice response system. That to me is wild. So,
hey, we are always talking about how with deepfakes happen, how these bad actors can replicate these environments, can get you to, they can build something that's truly realistic. This is it. This is the type of stuff they do, right? So they'll go in and they can with access to the code from an IVR perspective, IVR on a telephone, on a phone system, are able to replicate the messages, the decision trees, with the only exception being that there's a bad actor on the back end that's capturing your data. So if you're putting in your credit card information, your passcode, things like, oh, my voice is my password, where it's recognizing your voice from a biometric perspective, they're now able to grab that stuff and use it against you. So that's how deep fake evolves. They grab that type of information.
Yeah. And well, so they're selling this stuff for 1 million, 65,000 records. Are they getting all of it for $1 million?
How much does that work out to a record? 65,000 records?
65,000. And it's interesting for me to think about, how do they go about pricing this stuff? How does a criminal, how do they know what to sell it for?
I bet you it's a thumb in the air view of what they think people will pay for it. So that works out to about $15 a record, 15 and a half bucks a record in this case. I think it's more the round number they go after.
Yeah. Well, there's some data out there that says it really kind of varies in terms of how they price this stuff. If it's PII, if it's financial information, or if it's corporate data, supply and demand is a factor that comes into play.
Right.
The data quality, how complete it is, things like that. The resale value, some of this stuff can be reused.
Right.
Reused and reused.
Yeah. So I think there's some objective, subjective view of it. I think a lot of things vary. Maybe who the bad actor is, how good they think the information is that they've got out there, how well they think the compromised organization can gain access to cash quickly to be able to pay them. Right. So all these things I think they take into consideration, coupled with the value that they think that it represents.
Yeah.
Really, in the world of crime, my friend, there are no rules. We know that.
Right. But they are pulling comps, though. They are pulling comps and benchmarks and historical data.
Right. That's crazy.
Man, hide your kids, hide your entertainment organizations. They got Disney.
Disney.
They got Disney. Yeah, they got them. And you know what? It wasn't even a normal threat actor that you'd think about, like a nation state or ransom gang or something like that. It was a group of fans, a group of fanatics, if you will. These are folks that are really, really into, I guess it's the Club Penguin. Club Penguin was an online gaming club back in the day, and they're no longer around. But these folks who were super into that, they were actually able to breach Disney's Confluent server, and they got a ton of stuff. They got 2 gigabytes of internal corporate data. This includes old Penguin Club documentation, sensitive data about Disney's corporate strategies, their advertising plans, internal developer tools, and we talk about this a lot, but this breach was facilitated by previously exposed credentials. So now this data is being circulated online, and again, it is, I believe it's for sale.
So the Penguin Club
Right.
may be viewed as an organization that is less likely to contain some bad actors, but maybe someone infiltrated because they realize that there's that vulnerability in there, right? The bad actors are always looking for a vulnerability. So it doesn't mean that everybody is your friend in the Penguin Club. And it doesn't mean that everybody truly loves Disney in the Penguin Club. It could be that they've identified a vulnerability. So your fan clubs, your customer lists, your vendor list, your preferred vendor list, you always got to keep an eye on them, because you never know who's infiltrating them, who's posing as them, who's masquerading as someone that's a friend when really they're a foe. Disney, my friend. Have you ever been to Disney World? Disneyland?
I haven't, and I've never. It's just never really had that much of a draw for me. I mean, I don't know. Probably you've probably been a couple
So,
times
dude,
now,
Rosie, our producer here, our intern producer, is giving you the side eye because I don't think that she agrees with you at all, at all, at all. Let me tell you. So when I was a kid, I never really went to Disney World. I don't think it was really a thing that we did as Canadians. It was, if we did, it was maybe a once in a lifetime event. So we didn't go as often as kids do today.
Yeah.
Kids have been to Disney World, Disneyland multiple times. We've gone to
All the
all
Six
the different
Flags.
parks.
Yeah.
We've gone to we stayed at all the different resorts that they've got. Here's what I find really interesting about Disney. Disney is all about data and analytics. They build these analytics around everything that they do within their business to optimize their spend versus the user experience, but they're there for the long run. So what Disney has that a lot of governments don't even have is the generational view of your interaction with them. So think of children interacting with Disney Plus, toddlers growing to young children, to older children, tweens and teens, and then eventually young adults and adults. They've even got Star Wars stuff and all that. And if you go on Disney Plus, there's a lot of stuff for adults on there. So they have your viewing habits throughout your life, right? They've got those analytics and that insight. If you've been to Disney World or Disneyland, when you get in there, you got to offer up biometrics in order for you to have access to your ticket, and that allows you to purchase. That there's a PCI risk. They know what you're buying. They know what type of food you want to eat. They know what type of hotel you like to stay at. They know how many times you've been, how many days you've been, at what park, when you left, when you went back in. They have all that. So them being compromised is huge. Huge.
Right. Yeah.
It shocks me. It shocks me, to tell you the truth, because that's the risk with all these companies, regardless as to whether it's public or private. But that's the risk with all these companies having access to so much of that crucial information and insight. They've derived insight through time, right? That insight, if you look at the knowledge curve, that insight is way up there towards wisdom. And that wisdom is what you're empowering potential bad actors with.
Right. Yeah.
Huge.
And this to me almost it borders on expanding beyond just a cybersecurity question or cybersecurity problem into sort of a policy problem. I mean, do we want organizations with that level of detail about your life?
I don't know, man.
Have yeah.
I personally don't.
Yeah.
I don't. I think Disney has too much power. I think they, they're their own little city when you go to Florida. So it's very intriguing that this has happened, but it's also very, very scary. My mind was just jumping all over the place. I was thinking about me as a child, to my kids, to friends and family. I mean, they can triangulate all that stuff. Huge on analytics. Huge.
Yeah.
Wow.
Be careful, be safe when you're when you're going to Disney.
Yeah.
So
So it's the happiest place on earth when you go there, but make sure you have your wits about you. And you got
exactly.
to realize that when you're tying your credit card to that little magic band that you have to put in, and oh, that magic band doesn't work, or the first time you use it, you got to put in your fingerprint so that they can associate the two. Realize how everything triangulates. And maybe you shouldn't have your credit card tied to that. I know it's convenient, but maybe you shouldn't. Or maybe you should have a smaller credit card, but a lower limit tied to it so that at least you're blocking off access to the greater access to funds. You just got to be smart about it.
We're talking about Disney, how they got their Confluence server breached, which is, it's a data repository.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That makes you think about, software devs and stuff like that. And
Yep.
so GitHub, they're getting put through the ringer right now. So there's threat actors, and what they're doing is they're impersonating GitHub security team and the recruitment teams, and they're sending out these fake phishing emails that the end result of is that they can hijack the repository using malicious OAuth applications, and then
So
basically
what's
wipe
GitHub
the whole
for
GitHub.
our viewers here? Maybe describe what
It's a
GitHub
so yeah,
is.
so GitHub is it's a tool, it's a repository that developers use. It's a repository for code.
For software development.
For software development, exactly.
Okay.
So DevOps, development ops.
Gotcha.
And long story short, these guys are getting breached. So they're getting these phishing emails that look like it's coming from a legit source, either a recruiter or GitHub security team. They're clicking on it. It's redirecting them to a landing page. They're entering in their credentials. Then it executes or executes an OAuth application, and now you've wiped the whole repository.
Do you think as an organization, if you've got a set of developers that are interacting with your system, or you've got a bunch of IT folks, do you think they view those folks as experts when it comes to security? I'm just saying, just from a general business perspective, if I'm looking at my organization as a whole and I got to figure out where's my biggest risk for exposure, these guys have access to a lot of information, but they're well trained. They're people that should know better. When I'm
Yeah.
going to start training people, I start looking and saying, wow, let me go train my administrative staff. Let me go train human resources, people that have, less of a background in IT or security, because you think those are the ones I need to train because those are the ones that, are going to, a higher risk of getting my organization compromised.
Yep.
Developers should know better. They should know that if they
think.
receive something, that if it looks too good to be true, or if it looks too urgent, we talk about urgency a lot when these phishing scams come up, they should know better. But the important part is that they're the ones with the keys to the kingdom. They're the ones with the information or access to information that can bring you down. When you go in through your receptionist, right, you've got to work laterally to get into that information. When you're dealing with a developer and have access, there's no lateral movement. You're in there. You got everything. It's all compromised. These guys need to do better. They need to know better.
Yeah. I mean, the things that stand out to me, as soon as I see something in an email that's really pressing, just telling me I've got to do something urgently, that's a trigger to me. If I'm redirected to another page where I've now got to enter in login information, I mean, that's another clue to me.
Yep.
But,
and unfortunately, with deep fakes, dude, when that stuff comes up, you can't even necessarily trust who you're validating with. So unless you actually know the CEO, even that, some of these fakes are so good that you can really be tricked. Even when speaking to them, you think you're actually speaking to the CEO who's your friend, and it's not really them, and you find out the hard way. But basic phishing, basic campaigns coming through where they're soliciting credentials or information, or having me click on a link to go somewhere, anyone that's in the development space, anyone that's interacting with platforms like GitHub should absolutely be weary of that. They should absolutely be, in the know when it comes to the type of attacks that should come in. It should be a message to executives to realize that you can't trust everybody in your organization. You got to scrutinize and you got to train them all. Don't leave anyone untrained. No rock unturned. I don't care if they're the best in security or they're the best in IT. You can't trust it just because they know that they won't be the ones that compromise you. So you got to train them and you got to validate it continually.
Absolutely.
Cool. Hey, man, we don't have much time left, but I know there was something you brought up that was interesting. We were talking about, was it Globe Life had a breach?
Yeah. So another one of your neighbors, Texas-based company, They are actually investigating a breach that exposed consumer and policyholder information. So this breach, it was done via a public-facing portal. But the thing that's interesting about this is that they weren't the first to know. How they found out was through a regulatory inquiry. So an insurance regulator came to them and said, "Hey, we see your information out there. You guys have been breached." And so that's how this investigation has begun.
Great. So they gotta basically work their way backwards, and so they've gone from finding it themselves and potentially mitigating quickly to having someone else find it. So you know the damage is likely done at that point. And you got to pedal back. Here's an interesting thing, and I know we don't have much time left, and I know we don't really know the cause of all this, but here's what's really intriguing to me, T.
Hmm.
If you're an insurance company and you've compromised your insured clients, people that you insure, how do you then, in good faith, question or push back on any cyber claim that someone makes in the future if you are part of the problem to begin with? We're opening Pandora's box when it comes to the insurance
Yeah.
companies getting.
It's hard to think that they'd have a leg to stand on, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I guess it's food for thought, and I'd like to maybe leave everybody on that note. Maybe we'll have more information about it and be able to talk about this topic a little bit more in depth. I just find it intriguing. So that's all we have for this week, T. Really appreciate you getting these topics together and doing your research. Really interesting. Thank all our listeners and our viewers that can follow us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, Spotify, you name it, all the common platforms. Really appreciate everybody that tunes in. Appreciate the questions. Keep them coming. The more questions and comments we get, the more we get a sense for what it is that people like to hear or want to talk about. We'd like to thank our sponsors once again, Cloud Warriors, for being there. Your support is really, really helpful to us. We really appreciate it. We appreciate the partnership. Cloud Warriors can be reached at cloudwarriors.ai. With that, T, I wish you a good week, man. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, brother. Talk to you soon.
All right, man. Take it easy.